In 1910, beneath the steps of a ruined temple in the Sudanese desert, a British archaeologist named John Darstang swept his brush across something buried in the sand. Bronze emerged first, a curl of hair, then the rim of an ear, then an empty eye socket, and a face he recognized instantly. It was Augustus, first emperor of Rome, idealized, untouched by time, and torn off a life-size statue almost 2,000 years before. But the strange thing was not what it was. The strange thing was where it was, and which way it was facing. It had been buried face down, directly beneath the doorway of the temple, so that every worshipper, for centuries, would step on the face of Augustus on their way in. Whoever buried this head had done it on purpose. They had wanted Rome's emperor stepped on, forever. The temple belonged to a queen. Her name has been erased from most history books. She was black, she was Kushite, she had one eye, and in 25 BC, she did something the Roman Empire believed was impossible. She invaded Roman Egypt. She humiliated Caesar Augustus, and she walked home with the head of his statue in a sack. Her name was Amanirenas, Kandake of Kush. The war she fought against Rome lasted 5 years and ended in a treaty Rome had never given anyone before. This is her story, and it is the story Western history has spent 100 years pretending it does not know. 1,500 miles south of Rome, where the Nile bends through the Nubian desert, sat a kingdom older than the Republic itself. The Kingdom of Kush, 8 centuries older than Rome. The first civilization in Africa to forge iron at industrial scale. The first to make queens equal to kings. Their queens were called Kandakes, not consorts, not regents, kings in their own right, buried under their own pyramids. Amanirenas was born around 60 BC into the royal house of Meroe, princess, priestess, trained from childhood in 2 things: scripture and the bow. By 12, she could read 3 languages. By 15, she could shoot a composite bow from horseback. She married Teretikas, king of Kush, when she was 19. They ruled together as equals. Their son Akinadad was born within the year. Kush had been a kingdom for 900 years. Their pharaohs had once ruled Egypt itself. Their temples lined the Nile from Aswan to Khartoum. And in 30 BC, when news arrived from the north that Cleopatra had killed herself with an asp, Kush understood that the world had just changed. Egypt had fallen, Rome ruled the Mediterranean, and the empire that had just consumed the richest kingdom in Africa now shared a border with Kush. The new pharaoh of Egypt was a man named Caesar Augustus, and his first message to the Queen of Kush was simple: pay tribute or be conquered. Tribute was the language of Rome. Every people in their reach paid it, in gold, in grain, in slaves. Refusal was war. But Kush had never paid tribute, not in 9 centuries, not to Egypt, not to Persia, not to Alexander, and the queen had no intention of being the first. The first Roman prefect of Egypt was a man named Cornelius Gallus, a poet, a politician, and a fool. In 29 BC, he marched a Roman force south of the cataract and burned a Kushite village without authorization, without provocation, and without consequence. Augustus recalled Gallus to Rome in disgrace. Gallus cut his own throat before he arrived, but the damage was already done. In Meroe, the council met for 3 days. King Tereticas wanted patience. Amanirenas wanted blood. Akinadad, their son, now 22, agreed with his mother. Then, in the spring of 25 BC, King Tereticas fell sick. Within a month, he was dead. By Kushite law, Amanirenas was now sole sovereign, queen mother, living king, Kandake of Kush, and she had no intention of paying Rome a single grain of tribute. She mobilized within weeks. 30,000 Kushite warriors, composite bows, iron swords, forest elephants, cavalry from the southern grasslands. And in the summer of 25 BC, while Augustus was on a military campaign far to the west, the Queen of Kush did what no one in the Mediterranean expected. She invaded the Roman Empire. The Roman garrison at Syene had 300 men, 2 towers, and no warning. The first arrow struck before the watch had finished its morning prayer. Within an hour, the gates were burning. Within 3, the fort had fallen. Three days later, Philae. 6 days after that, Elephantine. 3 Roman cities, 3 Roman garrisons. Each one fell to the Queen of Kush in turn. Roman colonists who could not flee were taken back to Meroe. Roman gold was loaded onto Kushite barges. Roman documents were burned in heaps in the public squares. But what Amanirenas wanted most was not the gold, and not the slaves. What she wanted was the statues. Across the cities of the cataract, Augustus's likeness stood in every forum, each one a claim, each one a threat, each one she ordered torn down. From one of them, at the Forum of Syene, she took only the head, cut clean at the neck, wrapped in a sack, loaded onto her own war chariot. She did not yet know what she was going to do with it, only that he was coming home with her. But before she could turn south, one last skirmish was fought outside the walls of Syene, and in that skirmish, the Queen of Kush lost her left eye. She refused a healer for 2 days. On the third, she let her priest stitch the wound shut. She refused a glass eye. She refused a patch. She refused to look away from what she had cost herself. Her son Akinadad pleaded with her to take a glass eye from the Egyptian craftsman. She refused. The empty socket would stay empty. The scar would stay open. Rome had cost her this. Rome would see it. She turned the army south. 3 weeks of looting. 3 Roman cities sacked. 3 Roman garrisons broken. 20 Augustan statues toppled. The Kandake of Kush rode home in triumph. And in Rome, when word of all this reached the new emperor, Augustus did not believe it. His first response was a single name, Gaius Petronius, the most ruthless frontier general in the empire. Augustus told him, "Take 10,000 men, end this." "10,000 legionaries, 2 cohorts of Numidian cavalry, 3 siege engineers, 6 months of supplies, Augustus's seal on every order." By autumn of 24 BC, his army had reached Syene. He found the forums still scorched, the statues still in pieces, the heads still missing. He buried the dead, he rebuilt the gates, and then he did what no Roman had ever done before. He marched a legion into the Kushite heartland. He moved fast. He took Selkis, he took Premnis, and then, 250 miles into Kush, he reached Napata, the sacred city. Napata had been the religious heart of Kush for 900 years. Petronius razed it in a single afternoon. He took the statues of Kushite kings as trophies. He took thousands of Kushite citizens as slaves. He took the gold from the temples, and he took Amanirenas' son. Akinadad was wounded, perhaps mortally. Petronius did not stop to find out. He turned his army around and started the long march back to Egypt. Amanirenas was in Meroe, 300 miles south, when the news arrived. Her son was dead. Her sacred city was rubble. The Romans were halfway back to Egypt, with her people in chains. And the temple of Ammon, the temple her great-grandfathers had built, was a heap of black stones. Her advisors expected her to sue for peace, to send tribute, to beg for clemency, anything to keep what was left. Instead, she did the one thing the Roman Empire had not prepared for. She ordered 3 armies into the desert in 3 directions. They would not meet the Romans in open battle. They would haunt them, cut their supply lines, poison their wells, vanish into the sand before Roman cavalry could reach them. Roman supply caravans began to disappear. Roman officers found their horses dead in the morning. Roman wells, when they reached them, were full of bodies. Petronius reached the safety of his rebuilt fort at Premnis with 1/3 of his original army. He had not seen a single set-piece battle in 2 months. He had lost more men to thirst and ambush than any Roman commander had ever lost on this frontier. And then, in the spring of 22 BC, Amanirenas surrounded him. She had built her own fortress 2 miles south of his. Earthen walls, trenches, iron-tipped stakes. She was not going to attack him, she was going to wait. Petronius sent for reinforcements. They never came. Augustus was in Spain. The empire was at war on 3 fronts. There was no army to spare for a desert garrison nobody in Rome could find on a map. Months passed. The water in the Roman wells turned brackish. The grain in the Roman silos went black. The legionaries began to whisper. And in her camp, Amanirenas waited. She prayed. She read. She buried the bodies of her dead. She held court for her generals every night, and every morning before sunrise, she walked the wall. She had been Queen of Kush for 3 years now. She had lost a husband, a son, a city, and an eye. She had nothing left to lose, and everything left to gain. Then one morning in late summer, a small Roman delegation rode out of the gates of Premnis under a white banner. Petronius offered terms, a short ceasefire, a meeting, a negotiation. She refused to negotiate with Petronius. He was a general. She wanted to negotiate with his master. She would send ambassadors directly to Augustus, to wherever he was, with gifts and with conditions. And so, in the autumn of 21 BC, 3 Kushite ambassadors carrying a bundle of golden arrows began the journey to a small Greek island 2,500 miles north of Meroe, where the most powerful man in the world was waiting out the winter. The island was Samos. Augustus had taken it as his winter retreat. From its marble villa, he ruled an empire of 50 million people. He was 41 years old. He had no son. He suffered from a chronic illness no physician in Rome could name. He worked 16 hours a day. He believed himself to be the first man in history to rule the entire civilized world. His advisor handed him a dispatch from Egypt. 3 Kushite envoys had arrived in the harbor. They were carrying golden arrows, and they had asked by name to see him. He granted them an audience the next morning. The lead envoy bowed. Then he laid a bundle at the emperor's feet. It contained golden arrows, beaten thin, edges sharp. Perfectly Kushite, and a single sentence translated from Meroitic into Greek. It read, "The Queen of Kush sends Caesar these. If he wants peace, take them as gifts. If he wants war, he will need them." Augustus chose peace. He had 3 wars on his hands already. He could not afford a 4th. He certainly could not afford to lose one, in a desert no Roman could spell. Over the next 4 days, they negotiated. The Kushite ambassadors held to every condition the queen had given them. Augustus, exhausted, conceded most of them. The Romans would withdraw. The frontier would move north, far north, past Premnis, past Pselkis, all the way back to Hierosycamenos. No tribute would be paid by Kush, no tribute would be demanded by Rome. The Kushite slaves taken at Napata would be released without ransom. It was the most generous treaty Rome had ever offered any foreign power, and the Queen of Kush had not been in the room. Two months later, the treaty reached Meroe. She read the entire treaty herself, twice, in Meroitic, in Greek, and then she set it down on the arm of her throne and did not speak for almost an hour. She had won. She had outlasted Rome. She had defeated the only general in the empire who had ever set foot in her country, and she had done it without paying a single grain of tribute. She did not order a feast. She did not order a parade. She ordered a temple. A small temple, to Amun, with a single threshold stone, under which she intended to bury something very specific. Six months later, the temple was finished. On the morning of its consecration, the Queen of Kush ordered the threshold stone lifted. She unwrapped the bronze head one last time. She did not look at Augustus's face. She placed him into the cavity face down. She ordered the threshold stone replaced. She ordered the temple opened. She ordered her people to walk in, and on her own feet, her one good eye on the doorway, her milky, scarred eye fixed forever forward, she crossed first. For 1900 years, the people of Kush, and then their descendants, and then their conquerors, and then their forgetters, walked across the face of the first emperor of Rome, and no one outside the kingdom ever knew. Amanirenas ruled Kush for another 20 years. She rebuilt Napata. She raised a stela at Hammurabi that listed her victories over Rome by name. She had children, grandchildren, successors. She buried her son Akinadad in his own small pyramid. She lived to see her kingdom stronger than it had been before the war. And when she died, around 10 BC, in her own bed, in her own city, having outlived 2 Roman emperors, they buried her in a steep-sided pyramid in the eastern field at Meroe. Her pyramid stands there today, number 6 in the eastern field, bare sandstone, wind-eroded, pillaged in the 19th century by an Italian fortune hunter who blew the top off looking for gold. The Kingdom of Kush survived her by 300 years. It traded with Rome, with India, with China. Its queens kept ruling. Its iron kept flowing. Its pyramids kept rising. Then, around 350 AD, a new African empire, Aksum, invaded from the east. The Kingdom of Kush fell. The pyramids were abandoned. The temples emptied. The desert moved in. Meroe became a city of ghosts. And the bronze head of Augustus, under the sand, under the stone, under the foot of a queen who had been dead since the year Christ was born, slept. In 1910, a British archaeologist named John Garstang excavated the site with a brush and a journal and the patience of a man who did not yet know what he was about to find. He took the head to the British Museum, where it sits today in room 70, labelled, dimly lit, viewed by millions of tourists every year. Almost none of them know whose temple it came from. Her name was Amanirenas. She lost a husband, a son, a city, and an eye to the Roman Empire. And when it was over, she made the empire come to her, and then she walked across its face every day for the rest of her life.